where there was a 29% reduction in sickness absence days at work. However, there was no reduction in actual illness days. Just because you do feel less sore does not mean that you are increasing recovery. As far as immunity goes, there haven't been significant immune marker changes. Okay guys, so cold exposure versus sauna. What does the research really say? So the strongest evidence we've actually got has to do with the sauna and heat exposure overall. So essentially, sauna use is attributed to large reductions in mortality in long-term human data. So the best science we've currently got is a 20.7-year study of a prospective cohort of more than 2,000 men, found that there was 40% lower all-cause mortality for those using sauna 4 to 7 times per week versus infrequent users. There was a 63% reduction in sudden cardiac death, a 50% reduction in fatal coronary heart disease, 50% reduction in fatal cardiovascular disease. So those were the outcomes, but it was also found that the dose does matter. So sauna sessions of more than 19 minutes were associated with 52% lower sudden cardiac death risk compared to sessions which were under 11 minutes. So the dose absolutely matters and is critical here. This represents the strongest human evidence available for either heat or cold exposure. So it's thought that heat stress activates heat shock proteins HSP70 and HSP27. Basically, these help repair damaged proteins and prevent protein aggregation, which is a key feature of age-related disease. Sauna also upregulates NRF2, which is a major antioxidant defense pathway. It also increases endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or eNOS. And as we've talked about in other videos, nitric oxide is key for proper endothelial function. Endothelial function basically is how well the lining of our blood vessels are working. It also promotes angiogenesis, which is basically the creation of new blood vessels. Cardiac exposure also increases 60 to 70% during sauna exposure, which is a similar physiological demand to moderate to vigorous exercise. As far as safety goes, sauna is generally very well tolerated by the vast majority of the population. Times when you want to stay away from the sauna is if you have unstable angina, recent myocardial infarction, and myocardial infarction is just basically another way of saying heart attack, or decompensated heart failure. So essentially, if you've got any kind of serious heart condition, just stay away from the sauna or check with your doctor first. Also, avoid antihypertensive medication immediately before the sauna. This is mainly because there's a risk of your blood pressure dropping too low. So avoid that completely, and definitely avoid alcohol and sauna because those two things in combination significantly increases the risk of sudden death. So one other small study has found that there were temporary reductions in sperm counts for men, which were fully reversed within 6 months after stopping sauna. And it's also worth noting that Finland, which is the country with the highest sauna use, also has the lowest neural tube defect rates globally. Now moving on to cold exposure, we don't have any human evidence showing reduced all-cause mortality, reduced cardiovascular mortality, or improved health span. There's no prospective cohort of people linking intentional cold exposures to increased lifespan, and the absence of data is a major evidence gap. What we have found is that there is an acute cardiovascular risk, which is well documented. So cold water immersion triggers an autonomic conflict, which we've also spoken about in another video, but it's essentially when our fight or flight sympathetic nervous system is in conflict with our rest and digest or parasympathetic nervous system. So the cold shock activates the sympathetic and the diving reflex activates the parasympathetic. In controlled studies, 62 to 82% of healthy volunteers experienced cardiac arrhythmias during cold submersion with breath holding. And the thing is that death occurs within seconds to minutes before hypothermia sets in. The tricky part is that these arrhythmias, they don't leave any trace in the autopsy. So if someone were to die because of these arrhythmias, it would just be seen as drowning. And of course, it's no coincidence that 67% of cold water drowning victims are strong swimmers. That suggests cardiac dysfunction rather than swimming ability. And so what are the key risk factors? So one is a water temperature that's less than 50 degrees Celsius or 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Breath holding during submersion, because 81% of arrhythmias occur within 10 seconds of breath release. As we said earlier, face or head submersion is definitely a major risk factor because this activates the diving reflex and puts that autonomic conflict, the conflict of our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous systems. Pre-existing cardiac conditions definitely aggravate the risk for cardiac arrhythmias. And also worth noting is that early summer exposure, when the water is still cold but the air is warm, poses a higher risk because of that difference in temperature. So there's also additional acute cardiovascular stress because cold essentially causes our blood vessels to tighten up, which is vasoconstriction. That forces the heart to work even harder because you're trying to pump blood through smaller pipes, essentially. So people who have some kind of endothelial dysfunction, so again, with the linings of our blood vessels, any kind of hypertension, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, elevated blood glucose, These can all be risk factors which will potentially result in a less than ideal outcome. And the American Heart Association does warn against cold plunges because of the sudden spikes in breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. People who have any kind of heart disease, hypertension, or stroke risk are at even higher risk. So in a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials, which is essentially the gold standard of research, cold exposure has shown significant increases in inflammation immediately post-immersion and definitely 1 hour post-immersion. There has been no meta-analytic evidence supporting chronic anti-inflammatory effects. And this is actually directly in contradiction to a lot of the popular claims. A lot of people believe that just because they feel a little bit less sore from their workouts or their muscles feel less sore after a cold plunge, just because you do feel less sore does not mean that you are increasing recovery. In fact, you could potentially still be blunting your recovery even though you feel less sore after cold immersion. And another good example of this are NSAIDs, which are anti-inflammatory drugs like Tylenol and Aleve and paracetamol. So all of these together can still cause you to feel less sore, but that does not mean you are recovering faster, nor does it mean you are building more muscle, because even the anti-inflammatory over-the-counter drugs like Tylenol and Aleve will, in a higher dose, definitely result in a slower rate of muscle protein synthesis and lower soreness, but not faster recovery for sure. So there's been no significant stress reduction found immediately post-immersion. At 12 hours past exposure, however, there has been a significant stress reduction observed. That tends to suggest that there's a delayed parasympathetic rebound and not an acute benefit. As far as immunity goes, there haven't been significant immune marker changes, and this includes immediately post-immersion as well as 1 hour post-immersion. There was also a large pragmatic trial done of 3,018 people where there was a 29% reduction in sickness absence days at work. However, there was no reduction in actual illness days. That leads to a potential change in behavior rather than a change in your immune function directly. As far as mood and mental health goes, one randomized control trial found no immediate mood improvement, and 5 uncontrolled case studies with only 13 participants did report improved well-being. So essentially, we're going through the relatively shorter list of studies that have been done on cold exposure. The evidence quality isn't as strong. Most studies examine single exposures, and they don't look at chronic exposures over time or prolonged benefits of a more continuous protocol with cold exposure programmed in. So it's safest to say that long-term repeated cold exposure effects are currently still unknown. Guys, if you're enjoying content like this, make sure you slam that like and subscribe button below. I'd love to know what you guys think about cold exposure versus heat exposure. Do you disagree completely? Do you prefer cold to heat or vice versa? And definitely make sure to grab your TEE calculator in the description below as well. And if all of this is still super confusing to you, I've gone from this to this, and it can be done with a stressful job. It can be done with work commitments and family and all those other things. So if you're interested, definitely get in touch below and schedule your free call to see if we're fit to work together. So what's the bottom line of all of this? At the end of the day, what the facts show is that we have significantly more research for heat exposure and saunas than we do compared to cold exposure. So just the volume of information and the volume of research that has been done on heat exposure is significantly greater, and that's just a fact. The other thing is that cold exposure, from what research we do have, seems to show more risks than benefits. Currently, there is no human longevity evidence. There is a well-documented acute cardiac risk and mixed or inconclusive health outcomes so far, and definitely acute increases in inflammation. Sauna, on the other hand, definitely does have its risks as well. However, there is much stronger long-term human mortality data because we have a 20-year study done on thousands of men. We do have large reductions in cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. We do have well-understood biological mechanisms, and the sauna has generally found to be much safer for the general population than cold exposure. So if you enjoy cold exposure, definitely go for it, assuming that you don't have any kind of heart conditions, and always check with a medical doctor, especially when you're starting up a new protocol, whether it's in the gym or whether it's heat or cold exposure. However, I could be more confident in saying that if you're going to try sauna, it is going to be a lower risk thing to try compared to cold exposure. And if you do try to go for cold exposure, cold showers are great, cold plunges in a tub are great. But if we're talking about cold plunges in open bodies of water, there the risk is significantly higher, and mainly because you have no idea how you're going to respond and you're not in a controlled environment. If you do cold exposure with somebody else, that's potentially a safer way to do it. So until we get more research and better quality research on cold exposure with large groups of people which are also investigating longevity benefits and all-cause mortality, at the moment, the win definitely goes to sauna and heat exposure over cold.